guys, it's Emma, and I'm back today for you with another video. And today we're doing another Rant review. This one I'm kind of nervous to review, just plainly because I believe I'm in the minority in the opinion that I don't like this book. And that book is Black Swans by Babitz. This is a semi-fictionalized autobiographical fiction, I think that's the genre that it's in, collection of 9 stories that basically look back on the 1980s and 90s. And like I said, they're semi-fictionalized, so they're Babitz's recollections or experiences, I should say. And you know, some stuff has been changed in order for privacy for certain people and stuff like that. The trigger warnings for this book include alcoholism, drug use and abuse, death of a loved one, mentions of eating disorder, and then mentions of police brutality, and then mentions of rioting as well. Okay, this book, I am going to be frank, I hate it. Before we actually get started, I want to make a point that this is not an attack on any fans of this book or fans of Babitz. These are simply my opinions and why I don't like this book and the stuff that's in it. You know, it was touted as a hot girl book, a hot girl doing hot girl shit in a hot girl book for hot girls. I was like, okay, I want to try and be a hot girl. Alas, I was disappointed. Vastly disappointed and just straight up confused. So yeah, I'm just going to be ranting, quite honestly, about all of the stuff in here that just made me infuriated with this book, quite frankly. Okay, so yeah, let's, without any further ado, let's just get right into it. Obviously, I'm going to start with the pros, because there were some pros to this book. I did like the party girl lifestyle, okay, because Eve hangs with a lot of LA social circles, and she is a party girl, so I did like the vibes for that. Jealousy was my favorite story because it detailed the double standards between when men cheat versus when women cheat. I really enjoyed that. Granted, that is the only story that I even vaguely enjoyed. And the last pro that I have about this book is that the writing, while I am about to shred it to pieces in a little bit, I will give it credit that it is very informal. It feels like you're talking with someone at a bar. It feels like you're talking with a friend. It doesn't feel like someone is talking down to you. It doesn't feel like you're at a lecture. It feels like you're talking to someone at a kickback or something. I don't know. So I did appreciate that. With that being said, however, the first con that I have about this book is the writing. The writing to me was superficial at best. It was very surface level, I found. It was fine on the surface, but you looked deeper, there was no depth. And the repetitiveness, there's 9 stories in here. I'd say maybe after Tango Land, the stories get very repetitive. I skipped, quite honestly, a few, I think, because there was just nothing interesting or new or different being introduced. Important news or just events that happened in LA history were kind of glossed over. They would be referenced and then immediately redirected back to her, which isn't awful, but it was done so instantaneously that any event that occurred that was referenced just felt like a landmark for, you know, what time we were in. Then the subject changes. There were little to no transitions between these subject changes to where it was incredibly jarring for me to read, okay? Because she would go off on these tangents when she would be talking about something related to the story, and then all of a sudden, like I literally just said, she'd go off on a tangent for however many pages, and then you'd kind of just be sitting there like, okay, can we wrap it up and get back to what we were originally talking about? It honestly came off to me as stream of consciousness narrative, which at one point I sat back and I was thinking to myself, all right, American Psycho, when did we get here? The transitions were so abrupt that it honestly felt nonsensical at points. And then this might be nitpicky, and if so, I recognize that, I acknowledge that, I roll with it. Punctually, there were so many dashes. There were so many dashes, and once I picked up on that, I couldn't unsee it. It was like almost a dash every sentence. And I remember I had one of my friends trying to read it, and he was like, there's so many dashes, it's kind of hard to read. I was like, Also, this last bit with the writing might also be nitpicky. And again, if it is, I roll with it, I acknowledge it, I understand it. However, on the synopsis on the back, it clearly says, collection of 9 stories that look back on the 1980s and early 1990s. Why were there some stories in here that were set during the 60s and 70s? And this could be just purely like a printing mistake, and if that's so, I understand that. A lot of people are saying different times. I remember I watched this one reviewer, and they said that this chronicled the 90s and the early 2000s. Not dissing that reviewer, I'm just saying that there is a precedent for the fact that the synopsis might be wrong. I don't know, like I said, it might be a printing issue, and if that's the case, then that's totally fine. That's not the fault of the author or anything like that. It's just, it's interesting to say the least. The second con that I have is just the fact that I think that there's pure insensitive and ignorant stuff spouted in this book. And all of these things that I'm about to say, I recognize that they could be satire, okay? But my problem with that is I cannot tell whether or not the things that she says are meant to be satirical or if she just thinks that way. I truly cannot tell. It needs tone. My main thing with this whole section is I just need to hear the tone spoken because I can't gather it. And therefore, what probably would have been satirical is now incredibly insensitive and ignorant. And I just don't think that this book is very adept at implying tone. The argument can be made, like I said, that I just don't know how to decipher tone. That may be true. That may be true. However, my counter argument to that is if you, as a published and I assume celebrated author, cannot accurately imply tone, yet average Joes on Twitter and Reddit can imply tone, I don't really know what to tell you about that. Ultimately, I would rather be overthinking it than underthinking it, if that makes sense. For example, in the story Free to Bet, she almost seems to glorify the black nanny stereotype with a sort of mystification of black nurses. The main character goes to one of her friend's houses because his aunt is dying. She's on her deathbed, and she's being taken care of by 3 black nurses. Quote on page 46, B, Angie, and Joanna standing over the dying woman, their hands fluttering darkly over her body, over her torso and face, mumbling, crooning prayer words, brushing against her like little ocean waves, ceaselessly as though helping her soul to depart. It was as though through their flutter of black hands her soul could free itself of her body, and it was a terrible mixture of truth, beauty, and intimacy. And then in Tangoland was where it really all came to a header for me, because in Tangoland, she seems to call Filipino ballet too ridiculous for words. Quote, and though I'd heard from a lot of people that I would love Tango Argentino and should go, I was afraid it would be like the Filipino folklorico ballet. You know, too quaint and ridiculous for words. Ridiculous word. And then in this story, she seems to spout borderline xenophobic material against Latinos, and it's evident in this one quote on page 116, when she and one of her friends are going to the tango place in order to take tango lessons, and he pulls up and he says, quote, I thought you said this was Argentinian, he said suspiciously. Why does it say it's a Bolivian restaurant? It's practically the same thing, I said. This must be that new geography, because last time I checked, those two countries were on the opposite sides of the continent. Then the big kahuna for me was right here on page 119. Quote, in Argentina, of course, men are such brutes, they brag about beating their lovers, but this is unfashionable talk in LA these days. We being the advanced people we are, and women having so little sense of humor about black eyes, and self-help being so in evidence. Tango is the defensive position of women, letting it bleed until it turns into a cheap fiction. So is she saying that all Argentinian men beat their wives? Because if so, I'm pretty sure men beat their wives everywhere, even in, God forbid, LA. I know, what a shock. I guarantee you, if you go down to a middle-class high school, you'll see a 16-year-old boy bragging about how he puts his cigarettes out on his girlfriend, okay? Unless you just don't dare to deign yourself to mingle with the poors, all right? Because I know that venturing outside of your rich LA social circles is quite terrifying, I know. Not only that, but the LA riots are mentioned in, I don't even remember what story it is, but basically for context, Eve Babitz and one of her lovers are stationed in this hotel, and they basically stay there for a whole week. You know, basically just enjoying each other, sleeping with one another, drinking together, doing drugs, possibly, just having a nice time in this hotel together. And the entire time that they're in this hotel, they smell, you know, burning smells, but they've kind of, you know, like waved it off every time they've smelled it, because they're like, oh, okay, you know, someone's probably cooking something, someone probably burnt something, someone's probably smoking weed. Not a big deal. After this week, they come down to the lobby in order to get something, I don't quite remember, and they see on the television a news broadcast talking about the LA riots. They essentially missed the LA riots because they were in the hotel with one another, and that burning smell that they were smelling that whole time, that was the fires being set during the riots. And so they're like, oh my gosh, these riots have been happening and we had no clue, so let's go out and see what's happened. And you'd think this would be a good time for self-reflection. It's not. All of the destruction, the meanings behind the destruction, why people rioted in the first place, all of that was looked over, and instead the attention was paid towards, oh, the golden hour. Oh my gosh, look at how the light shines on all of the smoke. Look at how the light shines on like all of these burnt out husks of buildings. That's what you pay attention to. That's what you pay attention to. So you're telling me that you have the thought of commenting earlier in this story about the police brutality, about the Rodney King case, but when it finally comes to talking about the LA riots themselves, the aftermath of these riots, you water it down to aesthetics? I just remember being so astounded. That's also looping back to what I was saying about the writing, about like important events being kind of glossed over and then redirected immediately back to her. That's what I'm talking about. The LA riots weren't examined. They were just talked about and, in my opinion, used as a tool for aesthetics. That's what it came off to me as. And not only with this, but literally every single bit of insensitivity that I've talked about with all of these quotes comes off as so shallow and out of touch. It is ridiculous to me. And it all boils down to her preaching throughout this book, LA is the greatest place on earth. Is it? It would seem that way to someone who missed the LA riots, quite literally. Lastly, this book is touted for hot girls. Last time I checked, the term hot girl was rooted in feminism. I didn't know. I was not aware that hot girls knowingly and willingly slept with married men. And following that, I also was not aware that hot girls continued these affairs with married men. I remember maybe like the fourth story, I was like, is she gonna sleep with a married man in every single story? Like, what is this? I also was not aware that hot girls belittled other women for dressing dowdy or mousy or preppy. I wasn't aware of that either. And you know what another thing I wasn't aware of? That hot girls belittled other women for marrying for money. For example, in the story, what was it? Slumming at the Rodeo Gardens, she basically looks down on everybody that's married for money. Some of us have to marry for money to survive. All right, not everybody's born with money. I know it's shocking to have to comprehend that. I know it's shocking to be affronted with that reality. However, at the end of the damn day, it is not a you go girl moment to look down on people, let alone women, who have to make money however they can, okay? Oh my goodness, because I remember on page 21, quote, I was glad I wasn't seated next to Celia, because what is there to say to someone younger than you who marries for money except, how do you like your money? I don't know. Talk to her like a regular human being. The sheer amount of shallowness exuding from this book is absolutely insane to me. All right, if this is a hot girl book, what hot girl? Not my Megan, not my Megan Thee Stallion. Are you kidding me? I think the hell not. I gave Black Swans by E. Babitz 1 star. Anger put to the side, I am just solely confused. It was surface level, it was shallow, it was out of touch, and it was just downright infuriating to read about this woman breeze through life and essentially fuck over all of her friends. Like, I don't know, okay? So this whole book, in my opinion, is so shallow, so out of touch, and just downright annoying. So you guys, that was my rant review for Black Swans by E. Babitz. I hope that you enjoyed. I hope that, I don't know, this could serve as maybe a venting point for some people if you were in a bad mood today, like me. You know, you could watch this video and hopefully, you know, feel some sort of camaraderie and anger here. 'Cause I know you just need to be angry sometimes. This video right now is already 37 minutes long, so I'm gonna cut it right here, okay, you guys? So with that being said, I hope that you enjoyed. I hope that you will stay tuned to more books I put out on my channel, because I do have a set list for the videos that I have to put out for December, so stay tuned for those. I hope that you guys are staying safe. I hope that everybody that's taking finals does really well. You guys got this. And I hope that you guys have a good rest of your day. Goodbye.